Thank you. Certainly proud of the group this past weekend, especially the last five periods of the two-game series. I thought we played extremely well. As I look over the first 10 games and, well into a month into our season, the encouraging part is our younger players seem to have adapted well. They've improved over the course of that period of time, and I think if we continue down this path, I think we'll continue to see improvement in these young players. This weekend will be a good example of that, where they'll get a first opportunity to play against one of our rivals. And I know from a coaching standpoint, as you prep for the week and get ready for the weekend, generally it's not easy, but the players are going to be excited. They're going to be fired up to go up to Minneapolis, and it'll be the first experience for our younger players playing up there. So as we finish up the weekend and finish Sunday night, we'll gain quite a bit of experience by going through it.
Do you plan on doing anything to get your newcomers up to speed on what a Minnesota-Wisconsin game is like, or do you want to just let them find out?
No, I'm probably pretty boring that way. I'm about habits and, starting at the beginning of the year and, being pretty consistent from a coaching standpoint. Again, it's what information we gather over the weekend, we gather in every practice, and my big thing is what we can do, today to, make us better than we were this past weekend after going through two, very competitive games against Bemidji. And it's from a player standpoint, I know when I first played against Minnesota my freshman year, you had the butterflies, you were excited to go up there and play, and I'm sure our players will feel that because much like what we see on the men's side, we certainly see it probably more so on the women's side, where these kids have either played with these players, they know the players. Both teams have high-level players, either competed with each other on under-18 teams or during festival camps or against Canada's under-18 teams. So everybody knows each other, and if you're competitive, you want to beat that person across from you. So that's what ends up, fueling this rivalry, and it'll be fun to watch our young players go through it.
How have your two freshman defensemen, Buckmeyer and Bowlby, come along here in the first 10 games or so?
I think very well. It was nice to see Natalie score her first goal this past weekend. I think a lot of players, when they get that first goal, are very excited. And if you look at our sport, obviously goaltending for young goaltenders coming into whatever level they're going to next, it's a tough adjustment. And the next position would be defense. So, going from Shattuck St. Mary's into Division I women's program at any college, the adjustments, there's going to be an adjustment period. And then, as forwards, it's probably a little bit easier because if you make a mistake, you got people behind you that will help you out. If a defenseman makes a mistake, you hope your goalie helps you out. But I think both of them have settled in. They seem to be much more comfortable today than they were maybe in early September when we first started off, and that's just the process of playing 10 games now, being on the road, making mistakes, watching video, learning from their mistakes, and it's probably being more comfortable than anything because they're both very good players. They're going to continue to get better, and as you watch them, this past weekend compared to maybe the first weekend against Lindenwood, you can notice the difference.
Abby was a pretty good player last year. How would you say she's become a better player so far from what you've seen out of her this year?
Probably just off what I just mentioned about our younger players, just being more comfortable. I think the hard part for the start of where she was going to be this year was the role's going to be different. Last year, the players that we had and the experience we had, being a third-line center compared to being a first-line center, that's a jump. And I think if you look at our league, you look at Minnesota, they're having the same situation where kids were backup players, whether they were second-level wingers or third-line wingers, and then you ask them to be second or first-line positions. It's just a different role. And so for Abby, it's a different role, but she's a good player. She had a great freshman year and worked hard this summer to continue to improve, and she's off to a good start, which is encouraging, which is fun. And I think she's just tapping into the player thing. I think she's able, maybe to become. I think there's still more in the tank, and I think as she goes along and gets more comfortable contact in this role that she's in now, I think she's just going to continue to get better.
Minnesota is also kind of in the same situation you are. Do you expect a similar series than what we've seen in the past between these two teams, even though they're minus some of their key kids like you are?
Well, I think it's probably going to be similar because, we're missing, a couple elite players, and they're missing a couple elite players. So both teams have things missing, but that next layer and that next group, they're pretty talented and pretty skilled. It just, some of them aren't experienced in the rivalries. So, again, they know each other. They've played with each other on different groups, and it'll be interesting to see how the nerves are when the game starts. But I'd imagine the early part of the game Saturday will be tight. It'll be like a little game of chess of nobody wanting to make a mistake, and then who's going to capitalize on one and score a goal to give their team some energy. So it'll be fun to watch.
Andy, in the back.
Mark, I know you don't put a lot of stock in rankings, but your next 7 games are against ranked opponents. Can you measure the degree of difficulty going from where you are right now to maybe getting your team ready for this stretch?
Didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that. Now I do know that. I think, the first part of our schedule was helpful, having a young team and giving an opportunity to grow and develop, make mistakes, watch themselves in video sessions. The nice part is we've been successful, in our first 10 games, and obviously when you win, to me, it helps with that confidence with these younger players. And now, I don't know if they're seasoned, but they're much more experienced than they were, 5 or 6 weeks ago. And now coming into really the meat of our schedule, and you look at some of the places that we have to play and some of the opponents we have to play against, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the challenge because I think the players will look forward to the challenge. So it's all a process of what you do on a daily basis and get tested on the weekend and learn from your weekends and move forward. And I think the group's done a pretty good job up to this point. And as we go through the next 4 or 5 weekends, we'll conduct ourselves in a very similar fashion.